Welcome to the fifth episode of the Kern Competence podcast, a podcast about all things Kern and precision. Today I am joined by Sebastian Guggenmos, our second CEO. Welcome, Sebastian.
Welcome, Marvin. Happy to be here.
And I already saw a thumb pointing up, not the second but the first. Well, as you might know, we have two CEOs, both with an equal share and equal say in the company. So second is not meant in any way demeaning here. It's just you are the second CEO to appear in our podcast.
Thank you for the clarification, Marvin.
I think my position depends a little bit on this, so I'm very careful right now. How are you this morning, Sebastian?
Oh, I'm fine. Had a great weekend.
Okay. Weather was very good on Saturday and Sunday. I think it rained most of the day, didn't it?
Oh, yes. And we had a thunderstorm also Saturday afternoon. I was on an event Saturday and Sunday doing something with my son. He is a BMX rider, and we had an event Saturday and Sunday, and it was heavy raining on Sunday.
Nice, but now we are in your office. It's Monday morning, very early morning. Your office is dry. It's not raining into the office, so we are well suited for the podcast. Now, the majority of people have seen you before. You've been very prominent at exhibitions. I think half the world population has seen the Instagram video of you pulling out the new panel for the TNC 7 machines. Nevertheless, let's dig a little bit into your background. Where do you come from, Sebastian?
Originally I was born and grew up not too far away, so I would say nearby. It's just 35 kilometers to the north. The town is called Peißenberg. It was, in the past, it was a very small village with a lot of coal mining right after the Second World War. In the meanwhile, we have around about 13,000 people living there. I was born there, grew up there. My family is still there, so my parents and also my grandma is still alive and lives in Peißenberg.
So very strong roots with the region. I guess this is a theme with people working at Kern. We have a lot of people from the region here.
We do have a lot of people from the region. This is mainly caused because of we have all the production here, so we are producing every single part here in Bavaria. We are producing every machine and a lot of parts of the machine here, and of course, therefore, you have we attract a lot of people nearby. But in the meanwhile, I would rate us as some kind of an interesting company also for people from abroad, especially when it comes to the academic education.
When you say abroad, you mean also Germany, right?
When I say abroad, I mean out of Bavaria, of course.
Yes.
No, it really goes to Austria. No, just kidding. It's we get a lot of applications also from US citizens, also some kind of China region, and that's pretty interesting for us.
Very interesting for a small Bavarian company, I would say. Now, you grew up here, obviously went to school. After school, you decided to go into the technical field, right?
Yes. Obviously I went to school. So my mother is a teacher, so there was no choice. I went to a school in Weilheim. And I graduated there. Both parents are working for the government. So as said, my mom is a teacher. My father is helping people finding new jobs when they are unemployed. And so both parents worked for the government and not very technical. But for me, it was pretty clear from the very beginning that I want to do something in the technical field, and this is why I choose a certain study.
Can you elaborate on this a little bit? Where did this interest come from? Was there anything defining in your youth
And no, I think it's more that everybody told me that I need to become a teacher, and you know how that is. If you're 16 or 17 years old, you really don't want to do what everybody tells you to do. So maybe that's the reason why I was more searching for a technical thing to do.
Okay. If I remember correctly, you studied, I don't think the subject exists in that way today anymore, but it's like microtechnology, micromechanics. Where did you go to university?
In Munich. It was the Munich University of Applied Sciences. Yes, the study, I don't think there is a direct translation. It's a mixture of precision technology, but also the electronic part. So the focus of the study was really medical technology, and this is why it contains also a lot of how to extract patterns out of electrical signals and that stuff. So not only mechanical, a lot of electrical and software focus.
Okay. When speaking to Simon, something that is very noticeable is the influence of his, I would say to date, longest employer, 3M. I'm actually, and I probably should have asked this before, I'm not quite sure, was 3M the first company that hired you after studying, or was there an episode in between?
No, it was the first real job. Of course, I had some jobs during this during university, but it was the first real job was working for 3M. I started in 2003, working as a mechanical engineer in the dental field of 3M. So this was the medical focus I had in university before.
That's quite a long time ago, I would say.
I'm pretty old.
I think this morning you look younger than I do, but okay. Tell us a little bit more. How was it back then starting as an engineer? And I mean, the dental field is very competitive.
So, yeah, I don't know if so. The first start at 3M was not extremely. Let's say this first job was not a fantastic one because I really started as a mechanical engineer and I just did drawings. I was the one who made 3D models out of two-dimensional drawings and put that into the system. This was more or less the job for the first 6 months at 3M. So this was nothing really
either exciting or motivating very much.
No, but I learned a lot.
Okay. You said for the first 6 months. Mm-hmm. What changed after 6 months?
A few things changed. Not in the first 6 months. I would. If I look back, it's more. It changed all the time working for 3M, and it really started changing in the first month already. That I got a lot of information. What is 3M really working on? I got my first foot into the door when it comes to project development or product development at 3M. And so, especially in the first 4 to 5 years, it was a rapid change in the jobs I did. And I cannot judge how that worked or why that happened. But it was just the case that in the first years, it really changed dramatically, coming from that, okay, this is a more or less still a student putting some 3D stuff in our system towards jobs where I really had the opportunity to take over project responsibility.
I think this theme continued in your later years at 3M, like that taking over responsibility, right? Tell us a little bit more. I mean, Simon has spoken a lot about his time at 3M. and I don't think we need to dig in as much detail.
I can tell you the truth.
Note to our listeners, we are always telling you the truth and nothing is ever... Okay, yeah, let's skip that part. Tell us a little bit more once you reached a higher position at 3M, because I think our listeners are really interested in seeing what you did before you came to Kern.
Yeah, of course, Marvin. So the thing working for 3M was that was, looking back, a fantastic education over more than 13 years. The thing was that pretty early I was put into in Germany you say like a drawer in where it's marked talent on it or something like that. I don't know if that translates very well, but they saw some potential in me, same as that did in Simon, but Simon was more in the marketing area. So, and by being in that drawer, you get a lot of opportunities, which does also mean that you have to change the job every second year, but the responsibility just grows. Now, maybe some people think, okay, how can you really change a job every second year? Because it normally takes a while until you understand what you're doing, and especially in the area where we are working right now. Maybe many people think if you don't have more than 5 or 10 years of experience, how would you judge anything in that area of responsibility? That is completely different at a big company like 3M, because you always have a really strong structure how things should be done. So saying that is, when I was a mechanical engineer, just in the second year, I had the opportunity to take over project responsibility as a work package leader. And to be honest, I had no idea what is the job of a work package leader. What do I have to do there? But it was all written down. Yeah, you can easily extract it from the documentation. You have colleagues nearby that tell you, okay, I've done that multiple times, so this is how you do it, and please take care about that. So the next logical step was then, after being a work package leader, being a project leader for 3M. But also there you got a great education first, and then again you have this extreme structure which just helps you to make the job. This was more or less over the whole 13 years working for 3M, maybe the biggest asset, and what I still use in my daily job today is that structure helps. And not only that, the things we learned, or I learned at 3M, but I would say also Simon would acknowledge that they were everything was right. What we learned there, the thing was just working for a big company or a corporation like 3M. It's hard to really get that to the customer at the end of the day. It sometimes feel that you have to use all your energy internally to bring something in movement or bring things forward, and you don't have the customer really in mind or in the focus of what you're doing.
So it's more like a machinery, a very well-oiled and structured machinery, but if you want to shift a gear, it's not so easy in a large corporation. I could say it that way.
Yeah, that's a... Yeah.
I mean, I'm always surprised to hear how structured 3M is. It's considered to be one of the most innovative companies in the world in terms of how many new product launches they have every year, how many patents they apply for. And at the same time, a lot of their training material has been leaked online. So if you go on Google and you type in like 3M new product innovation, you find a lot of internal documents because, well, they've been doing it for tens of years now. And for me, as I would say, I'm a very liberal spirited person, and I'm also very creative, which is unusual for a scientist in that way. And for me, seeing those structures, it's always very surprising that a company can be innovative with such tight structures. Would you, let's not put words into your mouth, but ask you, do you think that having such tight structures and such a strong company-oriented focus, that this helps in being innovative because you're, for example, maybe focused, or does it hinder being innovative?
I think so. If you ask it that way, Marvin, I think that structure does not help to be innovative. Structure might help that you allow different ways of getting ideas into the company. And you have different sources of later innovations. So let's just put a little bit focus on innovation. Innovation is, in my personal view, different to invention. Yeah? Invention is a brilliant idea, and when it comes to innovation, that brilliant idea has some positive market effect, and you earn money with, and then it's an innovation. And looking at the innovations or inventions, you have different sources of inventions in every single company. It doesn't matter if it's a big one or a small one. Sometimes you have brilliant ideas coming from internal sources, from people. They work here for many years or just for a few weeks, but they have brilliant ideas what you should do next. Then the next source of ideas or later inventions is listening to the customer. And also the third source of that ideas is just by looking around what others are doing, not necessarily in the same branch, but just, okay, what is the technology heading to? So right now we are all talking about AI, and of course there are a lot of there is a lot of input coming from that direction. Yeah, nobody really can judge what it's leading to. But so you have different sources of invention, and the structure, just like in that big corporation of 3M, should just not hinder to let these ideas grow. Once you decide as a company to really start a project on a certain idea, where the final target is to have a product in the end for the customer, then it's all about structure. It's all about structure. It's that you have the right project plan, you need to have the right resources allocated, you need to have the money to afford it, and of course you need to have a good understanding of the revenue you can later earn with that product, if it's worth it.
I think you're making a very nice differentiation here between the idea, you called it invention, and the product which you linked closer to innovation. And I find this very much true, because I sometimes have what I think are brilliant ideas. Don't laugh at me that way.
I heard quite a few of them in the last 5 years.
And seeing how much effort it is to take them to the market, to really make them successful, that is always surprising, because when you're an engineer or scientist, you're like, hey, this is really cool technology. This, everybody should be tearing it out of our hands. And then you discover, no, it's a long and painful way to make a product out of it. I'm guessing that structure is helping there a lot, and we will later focus on that structure at Kern. Now we have one pressing last step left in your CV, and that is starting at Kern. So I'm moving it a little bit more back on track here. It's very sensible input, but we first need to finish up. You started at Kern in 2016?
Yes, but Marvin, let me just go one step back, because maybe that's interesting. I'm not sure. Otherwise, just cut it out. No, because I just want to finish that 3M stuff.
Okay, yeah, sure.
Because maybe that's of interest too. Because after that project lead function, I was the next job I worked for 3M was more like an internal consultant. I worked for 3M Germany in functions for 3M Europe. I had a short education back in St. Gallen in the business school, really focusing on marketing. And coming back to 3M as a consultant gave me the opportunity to look at how our business model is structured, how to invent new business models, and how to evaluate if business models we had at that time at 3M or why they are successful or not successful. So this just is maybe important to understand for my later role at Kern, that I was not always focusing on the technical part of a product. So this was true for the first few years and being a project leader. Then I really changed the hat and worked as a consultant for business model innovation, and later in a real dedicated marketing function. I was in the last years working for 3M. I was a product manager for restorative materials, so very, very closely linked to sales processes. I was much more involved in in sales processes than Simon was at his time at 3M. So, and this is maybe just important to understand why 3M really still is something which is always in my mind when it comes to decisions made at Kern, because it gave me the opportunity to have a holistic picture of the whole business model, coming from a value proposition. How is the relation to the customer? How do you bring a product to the customer? And what really is important for the customer and his daily life? Sorry.
No, all good. I think something worth mentioning here to our listeners, especially if maybe they skipped the second episode, is that in our understanding, marketing is not advertising. Simon and I talk about this, or not only, Simon and I talk about this at length in our second episode. And to me, I mean, this is also what I learned while studying. Marketing is the strategic placement on the market. And
I would just, sorry for interrupting, Marvin. I would really make it one maybe even bigger. It's marketing is the strategic, market-orientated way of how to lead a company.
I think this is mirrored in your position here in the way you're interacting. Yes. So our listeners, Sebastian is not talking about learning how to advertise dental material. I think he made it very clear. Switch back to the second episode if you don't remember it. Simon and I are talking at length about that subject there. Okay, so basically that was your time at 3M. Mm-hmm. I really don't want to dig into reasons for leaving 3M, because I think the reasons are quite clear. There was an opportunity here at Kern. And we don't want to talk bad about other companies. So let's get started with you arriving at Kern in 2016.
Yeah, and just to add something here, I would never talk bad about 3M, because I'm very thankful about the time I had there and the things I was able to learn there, and many of the things I do today are just because I had the opportunity working for 3M. So, but now looking at how to come to Kern, it was a funny story, because both Simon and I, so we were working really closely together in the last 5 years working for 3M. We had many projects we worked on as a team, some successful, some not. But what we acknowledged both is that this collaboration or this teamwork really not only works out, it is also great fun working with Simon, and he brings in strength in things where I do have weaknesses, and this just is very fruitful for everything we did, or we are still doing. But we had the same feeling at that point in time that we need to change something, and this was the right timing to search for a new opportunity where we really can bring all the knowledge in. And this was the reason why we really searched for a smaller company where you don't have all that organizational structures in place hindering you in really developing a company as said market oriented. So yeah, we both had the opportunity to just walk through the production through the halls of the contract manufacturing of Kern and also the machinery. It was I think it was November 2015 when one of our sales representatives just brought us in the company and just showed us around what Kern is doing. For me personally, I was aware of Kern because grown up here pretty close, but seeing all that technology in the machines was fascinating. And we both had really, the first impression was, okay, there's a huge potential in that technology, but it felt like not really seeing a product. So coming back to what I said before, it felt a bit like there is a lot of brilliant ideas and invention around. Maybe it's just a step missing to make it to an innovation or a product.
Okay. That was in November 2015. Then you started in 2016. Give us some insight into the first 2 years, I would say.
The first 2 years, maybe coming back to my starting position was being a service manager at Kern, and this was putting me to the ground. and I can just recommend to everybody who wants to learn fast, go to service, because of course you have this interaction to the customers every single day, and you learn a lot about your own company, about the quality you have in the product, about the organization, also the lack of organization, and who is helping you, who is maybe not helping you in the first place, and of course you get all that feedback from customer side extremely fast and directly to the face. So it's I started there as a service manager, and I think it was in the first 12 months where my role already changed to more a quality function, to make our products more robust and more more versatile, but better in performance. So it was out of that service manager role where I put on that quality hat. By doing that, of course, it immediately started to more or less, the role was just bigger because it was not only focusing on service processes. Afterwards, it was really starting from R&D. Quality starts pretty early in a process. It starts in R&D, goes via purchasing to production, and later it ends in the after sales.
I mean, it is kind of the obvious solution to all quality issues is to just build the perfect machine. Just last year,
Can we skip the word just.
Yeah, just last year I suggested to our head of development, Matthias Fritz, that they should just stop doing errors in their product development. And he was like, oh, Marvin, that is a brilliant solution. Obviously, we're going to do that now. And it's very, very hard. But I think it's very fascinating that you start in service and within a very short amount of time, you move on to quality, onto like solving that problem at the root.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned that like your last couple of years at 3M were focused on marketing and product management. How was the reception to you starting at Kern, being someone from like, well, the region, but outside the company, and quickly moving into a position where you are telling the long-lasting engineers or helping them? How was the reception from the people?
That was, so looking back at that time, this was, and I'm also here, I'm extremely thankful about the people working at Kern, and they are still, most of them are still there, because it felt like they were waiting for people just having the experience, but also are not afraid of telling the truth. And it felt like they were waiting for somebody who really says, okay, we all know, or every single one knows what to do. So just put our forces together and do it. So it felt like it's
a lot of inventions here, but missing a bit of structure back then?
No, it's not the structure in this place, because what the people here didn't do in the years before, they more or less stopped collaborating in a way of, okay, this is the problem, or this is the thing the customer wants to do, so putting the customer in the focus and all work together to make that happen. And this is maybe just, I was maybe just the one who was telling them that this is the reason why we are all working here is to make our customers more successful, and helping them solving their problem. And so it was just that we brought all the functions and all the departments together, working more customer focused, not only quality wise, but also in terms of product features, and how we serve our customer in a holistic way.
That is, to me, very surprising, because I started 2 years after you. I started in 2018.
I can remember that day pretty good.
Yeah. I hope I've grown more annoying in the time since, so you always remember when you spend a day with me.
No, the interesting thing is, Marvin, because we are all talking about me, it was really when you started in the company, I know, I can remember that day, and you started in Alexander's department, and I think it was not a week after you started, I had the first discussion with Matthias, that there is a new guy working in applications department, and this is somebody we should keep an eye on, and this was you, Marvin.
You're making me blush right now. But the point I wanted to make is what became very apparent to me in the first few months here, and I mean it was only 2.5 years after you started in the company, whenever there's like a major customer escalation, like a customer is unhappy, and this still happens to this day, there's a certain set of experts that come together. So obviously we have like service tickets, and the customer writes a service ticket, and sometimes it's something that the service can answer. But there's like an escalation. You sometimes become involved there in the escalation, but often it's just like, it's like second level support. And we are like, oh, this is going to be tough, this is going to be difficult, and it's important that we solve this in an efficient and quick way. And then we have like these meetings where we are pulling out experts out of like pretty much every department, and there's 6 or 7 people sitting there. It's also, I would say, quite often you are sitting in on those meetings, not only because you're interested, but also because you're moderating those meetings that are productive. And then we spend like an hour discussing a customer problem and possible solutions. And then like after half an hour, 45 minutes, everybody leaves, they have their tasks, and they get cracking on that customer problem. And I would say this is the exact opposite to what you were explaining beforehand, how it was when you started at Kern. Because now it's very easy. You basically have to mention, hey, customer problem, and there's like 6 departments storming, or experts from 6 departments storming into a meeting room trying to solve that one. And I'm now putting words which are maybe not completely correct, but I think this is a change you brought into the company.
I don't think it was me personally, but what really changed dramatically in the first years was when, of course, we had situations like that much more often in the past. And whenever, in the first weeks when I stepped into a meeting at Kern and we were discussing some issues we had, the first question each department has, okay, who is guilty? Who made that mistake? And this was maybe the only time when I really set up a certain rule at 3M that at Kern. I didn't talk about 3M that much over the last 6 years, but you brought me back to that. So at Kern it was when I stepped into a meeting and I said, okay, if anybody asks the question who made the mistake or who is guilty, I will immediately step out the meeting. I'm absolutely not interested in that. I want to solve the problem, and I don't care who made a mistake. And this was maybe the only real rule I put on a paper at Kern in the very first years. And then coming back to what you are saying, why it's also for me important to be involved in that is you can learn so much about the processes and the process defects you have in really working on a customer demand. And even more important is for me or for us at Kern, leading does not mean that you dominate something. Leading is to support the organization, and support really does in my world mean that if it's too complex for somebody, if it's if the pressure is too high, then it's the task of the organization to help and just escalate that into the levels which are therefore to support and not to dominate.
Okay, moving this along, we've talked about the first few years you had at Kern. Now, one big elephant in the room is obviously sometime after starting here, you took over the company together with Simon. Simon already spoke a little bit about how it was in the beginning. Something I forgot to ask back then, but I think would be of great interest to our listeners is, how did it feel taking over the company?
The thing is that didn't take place overnight. So we had the first internal discussions, just Simon and me, I think more than a year before we really signed something on a paper. So it's not that you wake up on a Tuesday morning and then you sign a paper and then you own a company and everything changed. So what I want to say, Marvin, is you have time, and it's not that it changes. So once you did the signature, for me personally, it didn't change the situation dramatically, because the process until you sign something like that was pretty long. And of course you can for yourself just work on that mentally a bit better. Of course, the responsibility you have afterwards, that really change with the signature you do. And this is looking back at that time. So it didn't feel completely different after that, but you immediately feel it when something goes wrong or you have some crisis, and we had a lot during the last few years. So automotive, mold and die, of course we had the COVID, and all that has a real, it hits you hard because of the responsibility you have for the company, for the people working there, for the families behind that people, and that changed.
Okay. Nowadays, your business card says Managing Director. I mostly call you our CEO. Tell us a little bit about like your responsibilities.
Okay, so responsibility is quite broad. I'm back in the technical field, so what I studied years ago. Of course, a big portion of what I'm focusing on is R&D. We are an innovation-driven company. We need that inventions in the company. So R&D is a big portion of what I'm focusing on. Not as much as I would like to from time to time, but we all know that being a technology leader in 5-axis high precision milling, and I would rate us as being a technology leader in there.
I could agree.
And to defeat that position, or ideally to make the next step before somebody comes after, that needs a lot of focus on that R&D. Of course, right after R&D, you have purchasing, you have production, and we talked about quality a lot. So both has a tremendous influence on quality. So having the right partners in the supply chain, delivering the right products in the right quality, that also is also in my area of responsibility. Same as production is then the training center, which is very important today to help our customers. If I look a few years ahead, I would say this is maybe the one department where we will see a lot of change during the next years, because that will be a much bigger focus in the next few years. And then after sales service is also in my area of responsibility. And then some backbone activities like IT, for example, and facility management. And I didn't forget it, but it's for me really the most important area of responsibility in my job is HR. So HR is the most important one, and I would say today I'm focusing as much as on HR as I do on R&D, but it should be different. It should be much more in HR, because of course maybe in some cases, as you said, maybe I can help in some certain cases, or maybe I'm also successful in having price negotiations with our suppliers, but the most value I think I can bring in is having the right people in the right positions, and letting them letting them the freedom to do what they think is the right thing to do.
You've mentioned 2 points, and actually, and I don't think you looked at the outline I gave for this podcast, but you basically mentioned the 2 points we're still going to talk about today. You mentioned R&D and HR, but this is now a much better point to talk about HR, so we're going to skip the R&D to the end of the podcast. You already told people that you remember when I started here, and something I find very interesting about this company is what it can offer to a young person, to a young engineer. Because when I came here, I already had my 10,000 hours on a milling machine, but I was still just finishing up my studies. I was very young, I was very green, I didn't know a lot about like real process development, and I started here and I got a huge chunk of responsibility. Basically what happened at Kern was they gave me a project and they were like, you're now the head of the project. You finish this. It's you can do what you want there, but it needs to be good. And to me, this was insane. I had like all of the responsibility. I think Kern has a lot of very good and valuable points for working here. And it's shameless advertising what we are doing here, but I want to dig with you a little bit into this one. Let us start by, what do you think attracts a person to coming to Kern?
Of course, it should be the technology. No, so the technology is so when it comes to the academic R&D positions, it should be the technology. Of course, also the people so. If you step into that company, and as you said, I'm there every day in the pretty early morning. So I start here at 6 o'clock nearly every morning, sometimes a bit earlier. And I really like that first hour because it feels like that the company gets back to energy every day. And this is what I really like. And that feeling is something I want to, or I hope that every employee has working for 3M, that this company is full of energy because everybody is full of energy. And so if you feel that energy and you feel that help by people who have the experience, so we don't have just greenhorns, and as Marvin was 5 years ago, so you can rely on the people who have experience. You can ask for help, and you should receive help if you ask for. But it's very, very important that people like you were, and we have them in a few other positions, have the opportunity to just play around. It's not that anybody thinks outside that this is about gamification or something like that. But you need to play around in the first few months to see, okay, this is how that thing works. These are the people I can ask for help, and then develop your own ideas on how to bring that company forward. And what we try to set as a company, and this is mainly on Matthias Fritz's shoulders, is we want to just open that field up for young talents to bring their ideas to reality. And sometimes that works out, sometimes not.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite interesting. When I started here, my first project was a process development, hardened stainless steel, and basically the only requirement was like, Marvin, make it single-digit nanometric roughness.
Yeah, and save tool cost.
Yes, obviously. I never delivered on that subject, but it was kind of like the methodology for this was up to me. And in the beginning, I mean, obviously I started like every student does, and I did a little bit of literature review. And then I got to try things out. One of the first things Alexander Stauder said to me was like, you should just try it out. You should see our current process. Don't just read the stuff, but try it out. And I mean, this is the basic of all scientific work, having that experiment. You said play around, and I'm also not into gamification. But I would say just like being curious and being able to explore something is really interesting there. The second point you mentioned is like getting help, and this was also, I mean, back then I would say I was already a pretty proficient machinist back then, and I was a scientist, but something I didn't have a lot of experience with was mechanical engineering. And as a scientist, you do a full factorial experiment plan. So you're just like trying out every parameter. And obviously, in the real world, outside of a science lab, you can't try out every parameter because resources are limited. You have limited time, you have limited money, and you have limited machines available. So you need to be a little bit more conscious about what you're doing. And a principle I didn't know back then, and I was discussing this. I was like, hey, Matthias, I kind of want to do this experiment plan, but I don't have the time for it. And this is where the experience, because we have experienced people, comes in. He pointed me towards design of experiments.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think I spoke to you at lunch about it, like how difficult it is. And you were like, oh, we did a lot of this at 3M. And then you gave me like 3 books on the subject. And this really helped get me started. And I would say that design of experiments probably had the largest impact on my scientific work, because it makes so much sense once you really dig into this one. And at the same time, I would say there's a very limited amount of people who can actually master this one. So yeah, it's that curiosity, that openness for trying it out, but also there's a huge base of knowledge inside the company.
Yeah. So just I want to jump into that because it's you know that I was working for 3M also as a Six Sigma black belt, and today I would judge not Six Sigma as a tool which you can just use to make a company better, because what's missing there is this first creative part of being faced with something new, and this is what I say with playing around. This playing around phase, you will not find it in any Six Sigma design of experiments booklet. There is no chapter saying playing around. But this is for me a very, very important portion that you, after that play phase, you really have a much better understanding about how to set up the right design of experiment. And this is what I think is in some cases done wrong today, that we skip that playing around phase. And I don't know if, and I don't remember the numbers right, but there are certain studies outside that people lose their genius during their whole education. You know that study, Marvin?
Mm-hmm.
No? Okay, so this is, I can't remember it right, but I think it is the case that you can judge people if they are genius or not, and you can judge that in different ages. And I think in the age between 0 and 6 months, it's just, of course, with how they react on you. I think more than 90% of the people, or 95%, something like that, are rated as genius. And then you have the next phase, it's 6 months to 2 years, and then the number is still pretty high. I can't remember it right, let's say 75% or whatsoever else. You have a tremendous drop in that when young people start going to school, being educated. So at the age of 6, you lose all the genius behaviors of the people, and you drop it down during university and education by tremendous numbers. And at the end of education, you just have 2 to 5% just being rated as genius. And this is, so this playing around, this just do whatever you want, is so important to, in my personal opinion, to be successful afterwards.
I mean, in my opinion, one of the most dangerous sentences, and this is also the point where I get up and leave the meeting, is if people justify something by, we've always done it this way. I think these are right after what could go wrong, the most dangerous words you can say. And I've lit machines on fire before, so I know what I'm talking about. I think education, I mean, it's supposed to give you the tools, but if I look at my experience in school, if I look at my experience in university, and I had a grand experience there, but I would say a lot of the time you're told this is the way it's done. And the subjects where you're actually keeping that curiosity open, it depends on whether you have a good teacher or not. I would say with 90% of the population, math was a horrible subject. Maybe they were good at it, but they totally got told this is the way you do it. And they lost that sensation that math is a huge playground. And now they hate math, but really it is a body of thinking differently. I think it's something I conserved. I'm really not that good at math. Okay, I had like 8 semesters of higher math in university, but I can enjoy the beauty of math, and I can obviously do a lot of calculations, but I'm not a super genius in math. But what I tried keeping open is that playfulness in, like, you're not bound by the conventions of something. And I think a lot of people are missing this, and I think this is how they are losing their genius. That you are constricted by your education in a certain way of thinking. Some people call it like thinking outside of a box, which matches a little bit with being a genius, and everybody prides themselves on thinking outside of the box. But then you look at the majority of people and their solutions, and they are just like inside the box. I think it's very interesting for a young engineer to come into our company, to have that huge body of knowledge, and at the same time getting to think outside of the box, because you own the solution if you are working with us. I think that's very interesting and attractive, and it still fascinates me to this day that you can do that.
Yeah, this is so. I like that picture of it should feel like coming to a big playground in the very first weeks, and you just should have the opportunity to look around, to play around with the different stuff you see, and by doing that, combining things, combining technology, and making something new on that playground, which in many cases is not useful at all afterwards. So it's not the case that everybody who starts here develops the next great new machine. But we always get new ideas, and of course we also learn what's working and what's not working, and this is very, very important. So it should feel like a playground working for Kern.
This is the perfect lead over to something new. Now we are moving to R&D. Okay. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, we are not running out of time, but we are approaching the 1 hour mark, so we need to finish this one up in a decent amount of time. So, Sebastian, I think this is going to be the first time we are talking in a really public setting about this. You've teasered our new machine last year at the open house days in Chicago, but this was kind of behind closed doors, a lot of customers and potential customers there. Mm-hmm. This is the first time we're talking about it, and I'm just going to say it forthright. In a couple of months, HD Plus is coming. Woo! 3 cheers for a new machine. Now, very surprisingly for some of our listeners, to me it's not that surprising because you have a huge technical background and very interesting. You do the project management for HD Plus. Mm-hmm. Tell us a little bit about HD Plus. What is new about the machine?
What is new? So maybe just commenting on the thing is, yes, I name myself as a project leader for HD Plus, and why is that the case? Because it's exactly what we described before. We are more or less with the HD Plus, we are combining 3 projects at Kern in one product, and this is so we had 3 ongoing project developments, and we saw that that it's the right timing to make the next step in this 5-axis milling technology, and this is all linked in this HD Plus project. The HD Plus is not, if you think okay, what can come after an HD, it can just be a facelift, and let's do a new design of the of the sheet metal housing, and then we name it HD Plus and paint it a little bit different. That's absolutely not the truth. It's the technology we have in that machine is again fascinating. We all hope, and coming back to where we started, we all hope that this is the next innovation. Today it's an invention. We are pretty proud of the 3 major things we developed in there. If it's really an innovation, depends more or less on our customers, and if it's economically a good product. But in terms of technology, this is combining 3 major projects we had at Kern over the last few years.
Okay, now we need to get specific. Innovation number 1.
Yeah, invention number 1. Oh, Marvin. No. So the first thing and is maybe we take the spindle as the first component. We will bring the new CSC spindle available for the Kern Micro HD Plus. And this is not the same kind of spindle you see on other machines in the market, because our approach is not just to use a very, very good developed project.
I have to interrupt you for a moment. CSC stands for compact shaft cooling. Oh. So this means in the spindle, it's not only the spindle bearings and the outside of the spindle that is being cooled, but you have a rotary feed through, and the spindle shaft is actually cooled. Now you can continue.
Thank you, Marvin. Yes, and by doing that, of course, it's the next major step in terms of productivity, and also adds a next portion of precision. But productivity is in focus because the warm-up time and especially the dwell-down cycles are much, much shorter. So we are talking about numbers of around about 80% to get the heat out of the spindle. And we are doing that by having a own developed temperature management system. So just that means that we do not just flood the spindle with cold water. So let's say 20 degrees, we really regulate the temperature in there. And this is why it took a while for us to bring that into our product, but it's completely different how we do it in comparison to all the others.
I mean, shaft-cooled spindles are a known thing on the market. If you look to our competition, some of them have shaft-cooled spindles. It's a well-known product, and I remember very well when we had like the first spindle in here and we operated it to manufacturer specification, which is flooded with 20 degrees Celsius cold coolant. We were kind of disappointed by the behavior. Because everybody was thinking, oh, this is going to be the next step forward in thermal behavior, and we tried it out and it wasn't very good. And now we have this load-dependent regulation of the coolant, and the spindle is enormously better. On my machine outside, the Marv machine, I have one of those CSC spindles, and it's
Marvin, sorry, it's still ours.
Yeah. So on the Marv machine, I have a CSC spindle, and it's an absolute pleasure to work with this one because warm-up times are so much reduced. And now I wouldn't exactly say that I do productive work with the machines. I mean, I get a lot of spindle hours on them, but I'm not hard pressed for time. Usually having a 10-minute warm-up time to me wouldn't really matter. But it's so nice. I wouldn't say I'm the most patient person. And even for me, just being sure that with a minimum amount of warm-up time, my results are like super precise. This has helped me in experiments. And I know from the calculations that in contract manufacturing, this is even more important. So fantastic news, Spindle. The second invention, let's talk about that one.
The second one is we will bring the new TNC7 control unit, so the new Heidenhain control unit. This will be available for all the micro platform machines, but today we really develop it for the micro HT Plus, and it just has a lot of new functionality inside. You can use it to monitor a lot of insides of the machine as well, and it offers really a great level of how to connectivity towards other interfaces, and of course, last but not least, it gets more and more important, this ease of use or ease of mind. It's still a control unit for a high complex 5-axis milling machine. So again, here it's not about gamification, but using a control unit should feel like also machinery is in the 20th century. So it's a touch monitor. So it is just much closer to the things you use also in private life, in consumer industry, and that just helps especially the young people to get attracted by that. And so TNC7 also, it's available for the other machines. It will be a great portion of that project when it comes to user interface and productivity at the end of the day.
I've been getting a lot of questions, especially from our existing customers about TNC7. They are like, hey Marv, when it is finally available and what is new about it? And I mean, if you've gone to any trade show in the past 2 years, you have seen machines from other companies already running TNC7. And so far, I have to say, it is going to be the next step forward, but at the moment it's a fancy user interface slapped on a 640. And I think our launch of the TNC7 will be sometime this year. I don't want to get more specific. Obviously, HD Plus is going to get delivered with that one. For the other machines, it's coming. And I think we've chosen a good time because Heidenhain usually publishes a so-called milestone in the fall season. And this year's milestone is going to bring a couple of new functionalities that really raise those points you've spoken about. The thing I'm most excited for is actually the process supervision in TNC7. There is a lot of aftermarket solutions how you can supervise your process on a TNC7. For example, wireless tool holders that measure forces, and then there's like additional software running on top. And all of these solutions have one major drawback. It is that they are synchronized by the time. So for example, if your time deviates, let's say your operator has turned down the feed rate knob a couple of %, all of these solutions kinda don't work anymore. And Heidenhain, because well, they have direct access to the control, they decided they are not gonna synchronize it by time, but by line of program code. And this is insane what you can do with it. Because usually, let's say you're doing a roughing operation. While the cutter is in the cut, it's very easy to supervise if something is going wrong. For example, excessive spindle load or no spindle load means your tool is either going to break very soonish or it's already broken. But something that is very difficult to supervise is how do you detect the tool entering the material, because this is kind of like a very steep ramp. And by synchronizing it to the position in the code, they are able to close that corridor much more tightly about that entry of the ramp. And then this is what you spoke about usability. Usually it's up to you define, like how do you want to supervise the process. And Heidenhain is giving you a lot of tools in that milestone. You can, for example, just press on like standard deviation, and then the corridor around your signal is going to be one standard deviation. And you can also let the machine learn the process be a little bit intelligent. So you're just telling it, this was a good part, this was a good part, this was a bad part, and over time it will adjust the parameters, the corridor you're moving in, to tune that process development. We will also be seeing the first real change to the path planning in autumn. They are changing the way swivel and spindle axes are commutated with the control. So I think when we are launching TNC7, it's going to offer our customers a lot of new possibilities, and it's exactly the correct moment to offer it. I'm very excited for it. I think you should be keeping an eye on my Instagram, because I heard and I was kind of promised by our PLC developers that I'm going to get the beta in a month. So there will be some posts about the new control coming.
Yes.
Okay.
So thank you, Marvin, for being more specific on that one. So I just want to add one thing is today there are a lot of brilliant ideas in such a milling machine and in the product. But today you're really right. So during the milling process, producing parts, it's more or less a dumb thing, this machine. And you have no idea what really goes on in that machine. Is the process really the right one? Is it on some edges already too far off, or are you too slow? Are you too fast? Is the tool the right one? And TNC7 will just open up your eyes during that process. While this process is ongoing, you can then extract all the data and modify your process and optimize your process. Ideally, make it faster, but maybe in some corners you see, okay, maybe I slow it down a bit. So it's like it offers the opportunity to look into that black box we had before. And this is all linked to the functions in TNC7.
Third invention.
Third invention, and that's the biggest portion of the development, of the in-house development, because of course TNC7 was a co-development with Heidenhain. We do the integration part, and we had the opportunity to bring in some ideas. For the spindle, of course, major development was done at Fischer in this case, but we put our plus on it in terms of temperature management. The last thing on the HD Plus, and this is what really sets the HD Plus a great portion apart of the HD, is we will bring the micro gap hydrostatic into the rotary axis, so into the B and C axis of the HD, which then results in an HD Plus.
That sounds like a massive project, developing your own swivel axis. Can you tell us a little bit more about how we tackled that project?
You mean in terms of project management or technology-wise?
Project management.
So project management, so this was really started as an NTI, how we call it. So maybe also here, so CSC was the first one, but NTI means new technology introduction. And if we see a chance of feasibility in a later project, then we start an NPI, which means new product introduction. But bringing the micro gap hydrostatic into this fourth and fifth axis is really started as an NTI, because we really had no idea if it really works out. Bringing that micro gap hydrostatic idea, which works on a linear X, into a rotary axis, because all the functionality or we used in the linear axis cannot be the same on a rotary axis. It must be completely different. And at that point in time, we had no idea if that really works out. We had a great team working on that. The team leader was, or still is, Fabian Tripkewitz. And he and his team made that idea a functional prototype in the first 2 years, and now really we see that it is really possible to make our own fourth and fifth axis with that technology. So the machine is up and running. You know that, Marvin. It's and it really delivers what we calculated it in terms of features and functions.
Let's backtrack to the start of a project. I know this from my projects. When you want to start a project at Kern, obviously you need an idea and you need to do a little bit of the footwork. But I would say on the official project start, you get, I would call it a project contract, something like that. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so as said before, I worked for 3M as a project manager, and of course at 3M we had it felt like so being a project leader sometimes felt like working for a governmental organization, because the work you had to do to start a project, to manage a project, was really a lot, and we could not just take that and copy it and just say, okay, Kern is now doing the same thing, because we don't have the resources just filling paperwork. So what we decided to do, okay, let's take the essential part out of these huge presentations we had to do, and it resulted in a project contract where the project leader just calculates, okay, how long does it might the project take, how much resources will it need to be allocated, what is the right timing, so having a first time scale, what is the budget needed at least for the first 1 or 2 years, and so what is the principal idea of the product, what does that product need to deliver, and then this idea, which is still a very technical idea, of course has to be judged by marketing if it really meets a customer need. So we all talk about value propositions. You all know that we talk about pains and gains, so it has to be either a pain reliever or a gain creator. So something has to be in that technical idea which really catches the customer, which really makes a difference in the product afterwards. And this has to be named or written down in this project contract. And once that is pre-filled by the technical lead, then it gets presented to the what we call project steering committee, which is more or less Simon, Matthias, and me. And of course, if it makes sense, we invite others. If it's more in application, maybe Marvin, you are part of that, or Alexander. So it depends a bit. And then we just sign it, and then this is the clear signal for the project lead. Okay, now I get the money, I have the resources, and now I have the approval to work on it.
During the project phase, we had a couple of sub-projects. So, for example, one goal was to make the axis a little bit lighter, which is good for the dynamics, but also stiffer. And this obviously required a new casting.
Yes.
We had a student, and I think up to this date he's still one of my favorite students, who did this project, and he got an introduction to FEM simulation. He got to simulate the whole body of the axis. Lots of meetings about that one. And the point I'm making here is, one day he came to me and he was like, Marvin, I have a meeting with the foundry who's gonna cast the new frame. And I was like, yeah, okay. And he's like, I have the meeting with them. And obviously our purchasing department was with him. But I think this is spectacular. Back then he didn't even have his bachelor. He was just doing a bachelor thesis on this. And we invited him to come along to talking to the supplier about actually manufacturing his part. And I think this...
By the way, that's never a good idea if it comes to price negotiations afterwards. So just a recommendation from my side, don't take the technical expert to the supplier.
We're still always doing it, I would say, or most of the time. And I think for him, it was a fantastic experience, just like seeing this side of the business as well.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we need to wrap this up because I saw my customers coming in and you have a follow-up appointment as well. I usually end the podcasts by asking my co-host a question. And the question is always the same. It is, tell us something that happened to you in the last month. It can be something positive, can be something negative, it can be something private, or it can be something from business side.
Okay, I'm not surprised by that question. Okay, so I was thinking, okay, what is maybe something which was for me personally a great experience, and it was the first time I did that. It was last week Thursday. I'm elected, I think election's the wrong word, but elected as an honorary judge in the labor court. Last Thursday was the first labor court proceedings. Thank you very much. We had to judge on, and that was really a great experience for me, really seeing something which was completely out of my box, out of what I'm faced with on a daily basis. It was completely out of my comfort zone, and it just opened my horizon of things we are doing, of how people are affected by certain decisions, especially in an employer or the interaction between employer and company, and that was just for me a great experience because it gave a new perspective on things, and I'm really looking forward for the next time. I don't know when this will be. I just get a call 4 weeks before that will be, but that was for me something I take a lot of new impressions out of it. And this is what I'm always searching for. I'm always searching for things which are new to me, and which opens the horizon a bit more.
Very cool. I have a lot of questions about this, but this will have to wait until lunch. Sebastian, thank you very much for your time.
It was a pleasure. It was my first podcast. I hope I did not too bad, but it really it made fun.
You do know what the reward of good work is?
No.
More good work? So I think we will have to do a follow-up episode to this one. Thank you very much. Have a good week.
Thank you.